Picture a stretch of ocean so vast and, so utterly desolate that the very concept of human scale just sort of evaporates.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, we are out in the Australian exclusive economic zone. It is January 8, 2003. And I want you to just imagine the water, a deep, bruised indigo, shifting endlessly under the searing summer sun of the southern hemisphere.
Right, the heat out there is intense.
Exactly. And there is no land in sight for over 80 nautical miles. There are no other vessels anywhere on the horizon. There's only the wind and this eerie, rhythmic sloshing of waves against a rusted steel hull.
And that hull belongs to a ship that is just drifting.
Right. It's a ship maybe about 20 meters long, just aimlessly wandering through the swells. The name painted on the side is the Hai Aim 6. Or, in Chinese, the Haiyan Li Hao.
Which is such an ironic name given what happened.
It really is. And
Yeah.
as you approach this vessel out here in the absolute crushing emptiness of the open sea, the total silence is what hits you first. I mean, there's no hum from the diesel engine.
No voices shouting over the deck.
Nothing. There is just this massive, silent metal ghost wandering the water, looking for all the world like it has simply, forgotten the men who used to sail it.
When we talk about ghost ships, the cultural instinct is to drift straight into folklore.
Oh, for sure. Like the Mary Celeste.
Exactly. The mind goes to the Mary Celeste in the 1800s, or like the legendary Flying Dutchman. We think of these centuries-old myths spun by sailors to explain the terrors of the unknown ocean.
But this isn't that.
No, not at all. The vessel drifting in those Australian waters in 2003 is no myth. It is a documented, deeply unsettling forensic reality. The Hai Aim 6 was a modern commercial fishing vessel.
Right.
It was Taiwanese registered, it flew an Indonesian flag, and it was, equipped with modern navigation and fishing gear.
Yeah.
And yet, it became the setting for a very real, brutally modern horror story.
A completely terrifying one.
Yeah. I mean, we have physical evidence, digital footprints, international police records, but the sea is the primary witness here. And, well, the sea refuses to give up the entire truth.
Which is exactly why we're doing this. Our mission today is to take you aboard the Hai Aim 6. We are going to reconstruct its chilling final voyage. We're going to sift through the deeply disturbing forensic clues left behind on its decks and honestly try to understand the absolute psychological terror that unfolded out there.
Miles away from any shore or any police force or really any hope of rescue.
Right. And looking at the raw facts of this case, I just feel a profound sense of unease. There is something fundamentally terrifying about the ocean itself. Its sheer scale, its indifference.
It's completely indifferent to human life.
Yes. It makes you realize how incredibly thin the veneer of civilization really is when you strip away land and laws and witnesses.
The ocean is arguably the most unforgiving environment on Earth. It swallows evidence, it isolates people beyond the reach of any societal safety net, and it acts as an intense psychological pressure cooker.
A pressure cooker is the perfect way to describe it.
Right. So to truly understand the end of this ghost ship, we have to look past the rusted, silent hull found in January. We have to go back to its departure.
To the very beginning.
Exactly. We have to look at the moment when the timeline begins, when 12 men stepped onto that deck in the daylight, under the assumption that this was just, another job.
So let's rewind to the origins of this voyage. The date is October 31st, 2002. Halloween, actually.
Which is a bit ominous.
It feels a little too on the nose for what's about to happen, frankly. So the Hai Aim 6 departs from the port of Luqiu, an island off the southwestern coast of Taiwan.
And this wasn't just a quick fishing trip.
No, not at all. The ship is owned by a woman named Sai Huang Shuer. She had equipped this vessel for a massive, grueling expedition into the deep Pacific and Indian Oceans. We're talking about commercial longline fishing.
Right, which is a whole different beast.
Yeah, this isn't a weekend trip with a couple of nets.
And we really need to look closely at the geopolitical and economic realities of that crew roster, because it perfectly sets the stage for the power dynamics on board.
The power dynamics are everything in this case.
They really are. So the ship was commanded by a Taiwanese captain, Chen Tai-cheng. And alongside him, holding the second most powerful position on the boat, was the chief engineer, Lin Chung-li, who was also Taiwanese.
Okay, so 2 Taiwanese men in charge.
Yes. But a commercial fishing vessel of this size requires an immense amount of manual labor to operate the gear, process the fish, and just, maintain the ship. The owner didn't hire local Taiwanese deckhands.
They outsourced it.
Exactly. They utilized international recruitment agencies to hire a crew of 10 Indonesian men.
So you have 12 souls in total. 2 men holding absolute authority and 10 men performing the back-breaking labor.
Which creates a huge divide right from day one.
Right. And I wanted to spend a moment on the actual mechanics of longline fishing, because just calling it fishing sounds, I don't know, entirely too peaceful.
Oh, it's anything but peaceful.
From what I've read, this is one of the most brutal jobs on the planet. What does this reality actually look like for those 10 Indonesian crew members?
It is a physically devastating and deeply isolating existence. Longline fishing involves spooling out a thick, heavy main fishing line that can literally stretch for 30 to 50 miles behind the boat.
Wait, 50 miles? A single line?
A single line. And attached to that main line are thousands of branch lines, each with a massive baited hook. Setting that line takes hours of continuous, exhausting labor.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You are dealing with heavy mechanical winches, thick cables under extreme tension, and the constant, very real danger of a line snapping and taking off a limb.
Oh, wow.
But hauling it back in is even worse. You are dragging in massive, thrashing, pelagic fish like tuna, swordfish, sharks.
Massive, angry animal.
Exactly. And you are handling razor-sharp hooks with freezing wet hands. You are gaffing the fish, dragging them onto a deck that is constantly pitching and rolling, and it's slick with seawater and blood and fish slime.
That's horrifying.
And the kicker is, you were doing this in shifts that can last 20 hours straight.
20 hours. Let me try to put the listener in their shoes for a second, because the psychological element here is so crucial. People often talk about cabin fever as if it's just, boredom.
Right, like you're just tired of reading the same book.
Yeah, but this isn't boredom. It's less like being in a sensory deprivation tank and more like being locked inside a running washing machine with 11 strangers.
That's a great way to put it.
There is constant noise, the roar of the diesel engine, the grinding of the winches. There is absolute sensory overload. The boat reeks of diesel fuel and rotting bait and fish guts.
And there is zero privacy.
None. You are sleeping in cramped, damp bunks. You don't share the same native language or cultural background as the 2 men who are barking orders at you.
Which means every interaction is fraught.
Exactly. And the most terrifying part, you can never open the door to leave. Land is weeks, maybe months away. How does the human brain even process that kind of inescapable, high-stress confinement?
Well, the short answer is the human brain really struggles to process it. And it often leads to a specific kind of survivalist paranoia.
Makes sense.
I mean, think about it. In a normal terrestrial workplace, if you suffer abuse, whether it's wage theft, physical violence, or just intense verbal degradation, you eventually clock out.
Right. You go home.
You go home, you talk to your family, you sleep in a quiet room. You have societal safety valves. On a long-line fishing boat in the deep ocean, those safety valves absolutely do not exist.
You are just trapped with your boss.
Exactly. The conflict stews in an enclosed environment. Exhaustion breeds deep, deep resentment. A language barrier means misunderstandings escalate incredibly quickly, and the isolation magnifies every perceived slight.
It's a powder keg.
And there is also the constant subconscious realization that the 2 men in charge literally hold your life in their hands. If you fall overboard, they're the ones who decide if the ship turns around.
That is chilling to think about.
It really is. When communication breaks down in an environment like that, the results are almost always violent.
But for a while at least, it seems they were surviving the washing machine. The ship's owner, Sai Huang Shuer, actually spoke to Captain Chen Tai-cheng over the radio or satellite phone in December 2002.
Right, about a month into the voyage.
Yeah, they had been at sea for over a month. We don't have a transcript of that call, but apparently it didn't raise any massive red flags.
No, she thought everything was fine.
Exactly. The owner hung up the phone believing her investment was safe, her crew was working, and the catch was coming in. But the reality is, the ocean doesn't care about a successful phone call.
No, it doesn't.
After that December contact, the High Aim 6 just drops off the map. It is effectively swallowed by the vastness of the sea.
That phone call is really the final tether to normalcy. We have a working vessel in December, and then we just have this terrifying void.
Just nothing.
Right. To understand how that illusion of safety shattered, we have to jump forward and look at what the Australian authorities saw when they finally laid eyes on the ship.
Let's do that.
We shift our focus to early January 2003. We are now off the coast of Western Australia, near a pristine coral reef system called Rowley Shoals.
And the location here is critical.
Very critical. It's about 80 nautical miles east of the shoals out in the open Indian Ocean. There are no major shipping lanes humming with traffic here. It is just endless, blistering blue water.
Which makes the initial sighting so incredibly chilling. 5 days before the Hayaim-6 is officially boarded by Australian authorities, it is spotted from the air or by another passing vessel.
Right.
But it wasn't just bobbing helplessly in the waves like a piece of driftwood. Put yourself in the shoes of the pilot or captain who spotted it.
Imagine looking through the binoculars.
Exactly. You look through your binoculars at this rusted fishing boat. The radio is completely silent. There is no one visible on the deck, but the water behind the boat is churning.
The motor is running.
The motor is running. The ship is underway, driving itself through the ocean.
A ship moving under its own power changes the entire forensic profile of the event.
How?
Well, an abandoned ship that is just adrift suggests a sudden catastrophic panic. Perhaps a fire or a sinking scare where the crew abandons ship and the engine eventually dies or is shut off in the chaos.
Right, like they just bailed.
Exactly. But a ship that is underway, moving with purpose but without a visible crew, suggests something far more deliberate and honestly sinister.
Because it means someone left it that way.
Exactly. It means someone, at some point, ensured the vessel would keep moving after they left.
And the mystery deepens immensely when the Australian authorities finally intercept and board the vessel on January 8th.
Because things have changed by then.
Radically changed. The situation is completely different from that initial sighting. I want you, listening, to imagine the sheer tension of that boarding party.
They have no idea what they're walking into.
Right. They are in these rigid inflatable boats pulling up alongside this silent 20-meter steel wall in the middle of the ocean. They hail the vessel. Radio silence.
Just the sound of the water.
They shout over the waves. Nothing. They hook a tactical ladder over the rusted railing and climb up onto the deck, hands on their weapons, bracing for absolutely anything.
And what do they find?
Well, when they step aboard, the engine is completely dead, but the steering mechanism, the rudder, is physically locked in place.
We really need to analyze the mechanics of that detail. A rudder on a 20-meter commercial fishing vessel doesn't just jam itself into a fixed, straight-line position by accident.
It's not like dropping the wheel of a car.
No, it isn't like a car steering wheel that you can just let go of. Depending on the specific steering system of the Hayaim-6, whether it was hydraulic or like a mechanical chain system, locking a rudder requires deliberate physical intervention.
Someone had to do it.
Someone either engaged an autopilot system, lashed the wheel in the wheelhouse with heavy rope, or manually locked the hydraulic steering gear below decks. Someone purposely set that ship on a course.
That is so creepy.
But when the Australian boarding party sweeps the ship, checking the wheelhouse, the galley, the crew quarters, and the engine room, they find absolutely no one.
So if the physical world is throwing up impossibilities, investigators have to treat this like a terrestrial crime scene.
You have to process it like a house where a murder happened.
Right. You walk the deck, you look for the why. In a marine disappearance, you are looking for specific environmental or human clues. Was the superstructure crushed by a massive rogue wave, sweeping everyone into the sea?
Or was the ship boarded by modern pirates who took the crew hostage?
Exactly. You look for signs of something external.
Investigators look for the chaotic signatures of violence or disaster. You look for shattered windows, twisted metal, or, a lack of life-saving equipment.
Blood.
Blood spatter, bullet holes, or ransacked cabins with valuables missing.
But they found nothing like that.
The terrifying thing about the Hayaim-6 is that it presented absolutely none of those signatures. The ship was structurally sound. There were no signs of a struggle whatsoever. No overturned chairs in the galley, no broken glass, no blood pooled on the deck.
That is so weird.
Furthermore, the most common killers at sea starvation and dehydration were completely ruled out. There were ample fresh water reserves. The galley was fully stocked with food provisions.
Oh, they didn't starve.
And down in the engine room, the ship's fuel tanks still held plenty of diesel.
Wait, but the engine was dead.
Right. The ship had likely simply run out of fuel on its active day tank or suffered a minor mechanical shutdown between the sighting and the boarding, but it had the overall resources to keep going.
The visual clues are just so confusing, but the sensory details of this crime scene are what really make it a true horror story.
The smell.
Yes. Think about the Australian summer heat. You have the sun beating down on this metal box day after day, and down in the refrigerated hold, which has lost power, 10 tons of bonito tuna.
Oh, that is unimaginable.
10 tons of biological matter left to decay in the sweltering heat. The chemistry of decomposing fish is vile. It produces massive amounts of ammonia and other toxic gases.
It would burn your eyes.
Exactly. The boarding party is walking through this unbearable, suffocating stench, their eyes likely watering, listening to the creak of the metal, looking for any sign of human life. And all they find is absence.
The psychological weight of that scene is incredibly heavy. You have this overwhelming smell of death coming from the cargo, juxtaposed with the incredibly intimate, frozen-in-time presence of the crew's personal lives.
It's like a time capsule.
When investigators went into the cramped crew quarters, they found the men's personal effects exactly where you would expect them to be if the crew was just about to come off a shift.
Sitting there.
Clothes were neatly folded in lockers, personal items, photographs, letters from home, all of it was left by the bunks.
But the detail that really gets under my skin is the toothbrush clue.
Yeah, that's the one.
They found 7 toothbrushes sitting perfectly still in the crew quarters. Now, there were 12 men on board, but finding 7 toothbrushes left behind just screams that this wasn't a planned departure.
No one packs a bag and leaves their toothbrush.
Exactly. If you are packing your bags to leave a ship, you don't leave your toothbrush sitting by the sink unless your reality is suddenly and violently interrupted, or unless you are fleeing an absolute blind terror.
It acts as a forensic timestamp of panic. The only significant things missing from the entire vessel were the 12 men themselves and at least one life raft.
Which is such a weird combination of facts.
It paints a very specific, totally contradictory picture. A ship in perfect working order, fully provisioned, with its cargo rotting in the hold, and the crew fleeing so fast they leave their most basic personal hygiene items behind.
I have to challenge the logic of this scene, though. Your brain tries to solve this physics problem, and the math just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Let's look at the running engine again. If the crew abandoned the ship in a blind panic, deploying the life raft and fleeing for their lives, who took the time to meticulously lock the rudder?
Right, in a panic, you don't do that.
How was the engine running just 5 days prior to January 8th if they had been gone long enough for 10 tons of fish to putrefy? Are we supposed to believe the ship was just casually steering itself for a month?
It's a huge paradox.
Think about the cognitive dissonance for those boarding officers. You find a ship that looks like the crew vanished 5 minutes ago because of the running engine, but the horrific smell tells you they've been gone for weeks.
It's a profound contradiction. Because if you are fleeing a sinking ship, you do not lock the rudder and leave the engine in gear. You just jump.
You just get out of there.
The locked rudder and the running engine suggest an entirely different strategy, and that strategy is deception.
Deception.
Yes. Whoever was last on board that ship wanted to keep moving away from them.
Like a decoy?
A massive 20-meter steel decoy.
Wow.
Think about it. If you abandon ship in a small rubber raft, your biggest fear is that someone finds the abandoned mothership, realizes something is wrong, and launches a search and rescue operation in your immediate vicinity.
Because then you're caught.
Exactly. By locking the rudder and leaving the engine running at a steady idle, you turn the high aim 6 into a wind-up toy.
That is brilliant, but so dark.
It chugs away over the horizon, covering dozens, maybe hundreds of miles over the ensuing weeks. When it is finally spotted by a plane, it looks like a working ship underway, delaying anyone from investigating.
It buys them time.
It buys the people in the life raft time and distance. But of course, a diesel engine will only run unattended for so long before an oil pressure drop, or a clogged fuel filter, or an empty day tank shuts it down.
Right.
That is likely what happened between the sighting and the boarding on January 8th.
Initially, when the Australian authorities towed the High Aim 6 into the port of Broome, they were operating on local theories. They suspected maybe the vessel was involved in illegal immigrant smuggling.
Which was a big issue then.
Yeah, that was a major political and border security issue in those waters at the time. Smugglers would use old fishing boats, pack them with desperate people, and abandon the vessels near the Australian coast.
But the fish proved otherwise.
Exactly. The 10 tons of rotting fish proved otherwise. Smugglers don't weigh their boats down with massive commercial catches of bonito. They need that space for human cargo.
Right. It just doesn't make sense financially.
So with the physical deck offering only silence, locked steering columns, and putrefying cargo, investigators hit a brick wall. The ocean had completely washed away the how.
It gave them nothing.
So if the physical world is a dead end, investigators had to look up. They had to look into the digital ether to find the ghosts of the High Aim 6.
And the transition from analyzing rust and rotting fish to tracking invisible data packets is where this case cracks wide open.
It's wild.
For a week after the ship was discovered empty and towed into Broome, the ocean kept its secret perfectly. But then, On January 15th, a full 7 days after the ghost ship was boarded and weeks after the crew actually vanished, a digital pulse rings out in the atmosphere.
A cell phone ping.
Yes.
It is January 15th. The Haiyan 6 is sitting dead and empty in an Australian harbor, and suddenly phone calls are being made from Indonesia.
Which is incredible.
And it's not just any random phone. The telecommunications data reveals the phone belongs to the missing chief engineer, Lin Chung-li.
The implications of that digital footprint are absolutely staggering.
Yep.
I mean, we have to consider the technology of 2003.
Pre-smartphone.
This is before ubiquitous smartphones and global GPS tracking on every single device. But international GSM roaming and cell tower triangulation still existed.
Right.
When a person is missing at sea, presumed drowned or lost in a life raft, their cell phone does not suddenly connect to a local cell tower in a foreign country, register its unique IMEI and SIM data, and start dialing local numbers.
Unless someone is holding it.
Exactly. That single ping completely dismantled the theory of a tragic oceanic accident.
The Taiwanese police immediately pulled the call records. The possibility of the ship being swallowed by a rogue wave or a tragic fire forcing the crew into the water is instantly off the table.
Dead men don't make phone calls from Indonesia.
Exactly. The authorities are now looking at a stolen phone, which means they're looking at a probable mutiny and murder.
The investigation pivots aggressively from marine salvage to an international homicide hunt.
They had to move fast.
The Taiwanese authorities contact the recruitment agencies in Indonesia, the ones who originally sourced the 10 crew members. They start tracing the identities, the families, the financial records, and the hometowns of these specific men.
Building a profile.
And they combine that with the digital breadcrumbs provided by the stolen cell phone connecting to towers in the Indonesian archipelago.
They trace those tower pings to the province of North Sulawesi, which is a massive, sprawling region in Indonesia. And against all odds, the Indonesian police managed to track down and arrest one of the crew members from the Haiyan 6.
Out of nowhere.
One man out of the 10 who supposedly vanished into the vastness of the sea. When they get him into an interrogation room, the story he finally tells confirms the darkest, most terrifying suspicions of the investigators.
According to his formal declaration to the Indonesian police, the tragedy occurred over a month before the Australian authorities ever saw the ship.
A whole month.
He stated that on December 8, 2002, the crew rose up. The 10 Indonesian men violently turned on their commanders. They murdered Captain Chen Tai-cheng, and they murdered Chief Engineer Lin Chung-li.
Based strictly on the facts we have, let's try to reconstruct the sheer psychological horror of December 8th.
It must have been absolute chaos.
You are out in the deep ocean. It's likely night, or maybe the gray, really disorienting hours of dawn. There's nowhere to run. The 10 crew members decide they have reached their absolute breaking point.
And they have access to so many weapons.
Right. We don't know the exact weapons used, but on a long-line fishing boat, there is no shortage of lethal implements. Heavy wrenches from the engine room, gaffing hooks, razor-sharp filleting knives. The crew turns on their commanders.
The terror of that realization.
Put yourself in the shoes of the captain or the engineer in that terrifying final moment. You realize that the men you command, the men you sleep mere feet away from, have entirely turned against you.
You're completely outnumbered.
You look out at the endless black water and you realize there is absolutely no police force, no Coast Guard, no neighbor to hear you scream. You are entirely on your own.
Mutiny is the absolute point of no return.
There's no taking it back.
Once the first blow is struck, once that invisible line of authority is crossed, the mutineers know there is no going back. If they fail, or if they leave the captain alive, they will face the ultimate penalties of international maritime law upon their return to port.
So they have to finish it.
There is no half measure in a mutiny. It is, by definition, a desperately violent and total act. The adrenaline, the fear, and the chaos on that small pitching deck would have been overwhelming.
Blood everywhere.
And after the 2 commanding officers were killed and presumably thrown overboard, the 10 remaining men are left standing on a blood-stained ship, fully aware of the horrific, irreversible crime they have just committed.
According to the arrested man, after the murders, the crew fled on a life raft to return to their homeland. But here's the part that is so deeply frustrating and, frankly, disturbing.
The motive.
The arrested man never gave a clear explanation or motive for the murders. He confessed to the timeline, he confessed to the act of mutiny, but the why remains a black hole.
We just don't know what sparked it.
Was the captain physically abusing them? Was it a dispute over stolen wages? Were they starved? Or was it sheer, unadulterated cabin fever that simply boiled over into madness? He never said.
The silence regarding the motive leaves a glaring void in the historical record. Without the why, we are left only with the brutal what.
But even the what has issues.
But even the what has massive, terrifying logistical discrepancies that investigators struggled to reconcile.
Let's dig into those discrepancies, because I want the listener to really think about this timeline gap. Let's look at this logically.
The math is very strange.
The arrested crew member says the mutiny happened on December 8. They killed the captain and engineer, and then they left on a raft. But the ship was sighted by a plane or another boat in early January, roughly 4 weeks later, and its motor was running. It was actively underway.
The fuel math and the navigation math do not add up easily.
So I have to challenge this confessed narrative. Did the mutineers really leave on December 8? Did they hack their commanders to death, lock the rudder, and instantly jump into a tiny, vulnerable, inflatable raft in the middle of the deep ocean, leaving behind a perfectly good 20-meter steel ship with a dry cabin and plenty of food?
It seems like suicide.
Or did they lie to the police about when they abandoned the vessel? Did they stay on board the High Aim 6 for weeks?
That is a terrifying thought.
Did they navigate it closer to Indonesia, living just feet away from wherever the blood was spilled on the deck, smelling the 10 tons of fish slowly starting to rot beneath their feet as the refrigeration failed?
From a purely survivalist standpoint, leaving a fully provisioned, seaworthy commercial vessel for a rubber life raft is effectively suicidal, unless you are forced to do so by an uncontrollable fire or a hull breach.
Right, you just don't do it.
If they did flee immediately on December 8, it means they executed the decoy strategy perfectly, locking the rudder, leaving the engine at a low idle, and letting the ship wander across the ocean for a month before it finally ran out of fuel, right as the Australians found it.
Which is possible, but tough.
But if they stayed on board for weeks, navigating it closer to home before abandoning it, it changes the psychological profile of the mutiny entirely.
Imagine the paranoia of those 3 weeks if they stayed. Every single day on that ship, you wake up knowing you are a murderer.
You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
You hear the engine humming, you smell the cargo rotting, and you know that eventually you'll have to abandon this steel fortress and take your chances in a rubber raft in the open ocean so you aren't caught sailing a stolen, blood-stained ship into a port.
You were just waiting for the day you have to jump.
Either scenario fleeing instantly into the void or living on a floating crime scene for a month is harrowing.
It highlights the extreme desperation of the act. Mutiny is rarely a meticulously planned, flawless operation. It is almost always an explosion of tension followed by profound, disorienting panic.
Right.
The fact that the engine was running days before discovery strongly supports the decoy theory. They likely rode the ship as far as they dared, perhaps until they spotted shipping lanes or land in the distance, and then they'd locked the rudder, left the engine running to make it look like the ship was still crewed, and slipped away in the raft to disappear into the vast Indonesian archipelago.
While the exact trigger for the bloodbath on the High Aim 6 remains locked in the minds of the missing crew, an eerie historical precedent suggests that this wasn't a total anomaly.
No, not at all.
It suggests there's a much darker pattern at play in the international fishing industry.
And this is where the broader geopolitical context of the maritime industry comes into sharp, chilling focus. The High Aim 6 was not an isolated incident.
It had happened before.
Just the previous year, an almost identical, parallel tragedy occurred in the same region.
Let's introduce the Horrifying 6, another Taiwanese fishing boat, another vessel operating in similar waters under similar economic conditions.
The similarities are staggering.
The year before the High Aim 6 was found drifting in Australia, the Horrifying 6 was discovered completely empty, drifting silently by an Indonesian military boat.
The parallels are uncanny and deeply disturbing. In the case of the Horrifying 6, authorities eventually tracked down and arrested 3 crew members out of a total of 10 who had vanished.
And what did they say?
When those men were interrogated, their confession was an exact mirror of what happened on the High Aim 6. They confessed to the brutal murder of their captain and their chief engineer.
It is the exact same crime. A Taiwanese captain and engineer holding absolute power, an Indonesian crew of 10 doing the brutal labor. The commanding officers are murdered, the ship is abandoned to drift.
It's a template.
What is going on here? How do we synthesize these two events? The listener has to realize this can't just be a coincidence.
It speaks to deep systemic pressures that are entirely invisible to those of us living comfortably on land. We have to analyze the recurring themes here.
Okay, let's break them down.
First, there is the hubris of the industry. The belief that you can take men from desperate economic backgrounds, put them in a high-stress, incredibly dangerous, and physically exhausting environment, pay them very little, and expect absolute, unwavering obedience.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Second, the extreme isolation removes all societal mediation. If a captain becomes abusive, there's no HR department, there's no police officer to call, you are trapped.
Completely.
And third, the stark mathematics of the power dynamic. 2 men hold absolute authority over 10 men who perform all the physical labor and have access to all the heavy tools.
The math just favors the crew.
When communication breaks down, when abuse, real or perceived, pushes the crew past their breaking point, the mathematics of the situation become deadly. 10 men can and will overpower 2.
It's the perfect storm for human error, exploitation, and absolute madness. But let's look at the desperate aftermath of the High Aim 6. The ocean is vast, but the authorities didn't just shrug and give up.
No, they mounted a massive search.
They launched a massive search grid covering 7,300 nautical miles of the Indian Ocean. Think about the scale of that area. They are flying long-range maritime patrol planes, running complex search patterns based on ocean currents and wind drift, looking for a tiny orange speck, the missing life raft, or any sign of the other 9 men.
And they found absolutely nothing.
Despite all that high-tech effort and aviation fuel, no other trace of the crew and no sign of the life raft was ever found.
To put that in perspective, finding a small rubber life raft in 7,300 square miles of the Indian Ocean is truly like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is constantly moving, changing shape, and actively trying to kill you.
That is terrifying.
The vulnerability of humans in a life raft against the power of the open ocean is absolute. You are exposed to blistering UV radiation, salt sores, severe dehydration, and the constant threat of capsizing in heavy swells.
Put yourself in the shoes of those men for just a second, not as a thought experiment in fear, but logically analyzing their survival chances.
You're in a tiny raft.
You've just committed mutiny. You've participated in or witnessed the brutal murder of your captain and engineer. You drop this small rubber raft into the pitch-black ocean and climb in with 8 other desperate men.
The adrenaline is crashing.
You watch the massive steel hull of the High Aim 6 chug away into the darkness, its engine humming, leaving you completely alone. You are drifting. With every hour that passes, your water supply dwindles and your chances of survival plummet.
And the ocean is unforgiving.
The water beneath you is miles deep. Was the ocean their ultimate judge? Did a sudden squall or a massive wave simply wipe the slate clean and take the mutineers to the bottom?
It is highly possible they never made it. The fact that only 1 man out of 10 was ever located and arrested in Sulawesi suggests a few distinct possibilities.
What do you think happened?
Perhaps the raft capsized in a storm, and only he managed to survive, washing ashore or being picked up by a local fishing boat that didn't ask questions.
Or
perhaps the decoy strategy worked flawlessly. Perhaps they all made it back to Indonesia, landed on a remote beach, and immediately scattered into the massive populous archipelago, ditching their identities and disappearing back into the extreme poverty they originally came from.
we might never know.
We just don't know. The sea holds the physical evidence, and the vastness of human society hides the rest.
The human element of the High Aim 6 was either swallowed by the sea or swallowed by the Indonesian justice system, in the case of that 1 man. But they left something massive behind.
The ship?
They left the physical shell of the ship itself. And its final fate, considering the horror it contained, was bizarrely unceremonious and tangled in bureaucratic red tape.
Yes. The physical evidence, the 20-meter steel crime scene itself, had to be dealt with by the authorities.
What do you even do with a boat like that?
Well, once the forensic teams were done, and the owner essentially washed her hands of the vessel due to the immense cost of salvage and the horrific stigma attached to it, the High Aim 6 was deemed officially abandoned.
So it became the government's problem.
Under maritime law, it was handed over to the Australian Fisheries Management Authority, or AFMA, for disposal.
Now, you might think a ghost ship, a vessel where a brutal double murder took place, would be treated with a certain gravity or respect for the dead, maybe locked up in a secure naval yard, or dismantled quietly in an industrial facility.
But no.
But no. Bureaucracy and geography collided. The High Aim 6 became a beached leviathan. Because they didn't know what else to do with it immediately, it was dragged onto the sandy beach of Broome in Western Australia.
And it just sat there.
And it sat there for about a year.
And because it was just sitting there on a public beach, completely accessible, it underwent a deeply unsettling transformation.
It's so disturbing.
It went from a horrific, blood-stained crime scene to a local tourist curiosity.
We have to talk about the psychology of dark tourism here. Imagine this reality. You have families, vacationers, tourists in swimsuits, walking down the beautiful sun-drenched beaches of Broome.
Had a great time.
And right there in the sand is this massive, rusting, rotting fishing vessel. People are walking up to it. They are touching the hull. They are taking smiling photos in front of a vessel where 2 men were brutally hacked to death and 10 others vanished into the night.
It's jarring.
It is incredibly macabre, and it shows a massive disconnect between the reality of the violence and the physical object left behind.
It highlights a very strange human psychological defense mechanism. When a tragedy is stripped of its immediate blood, panic, and context, when it just becomes a weathered, rusted object sitting out of place on a sunny beach, it loses its visceral horror for the casual observer.
It becomes a prop.
Exactly. It ceases to be a tomb and becomes an artifact. The locals and tourists just saw a cool ghost ship with a spooky story, entirely disconnected from the agonizing final moments of Captain Chen and engineer Lin.
And there was actually a fierce debate about what to do with this artifact. The local sport fishermen had an idea that felt somewhat poetic.
They wanted to sink it.
They petitioned the government to have the ship dragged offshore and scuttled. They wanted to sink it intentionally in deep water to create an artificial fish habitat and a dive wreck for recreational scuba divers.
Scuttling is a very common practice for decommissioned vessels. Sinking it would have given the High-Aim 6 an oceanic burial.
Right.
It would have returned the ship to the sea, allowing coral, anemones, and marine life to slowly reclaim the steel over decades. It feels, in a way, like a fitting, quiet end for a vessel born of the ocean and steeped in maritime tragedy.
But maritime law intersecting with municipal beach management rarely results in poetry.
No, it usually results in bureaucracy.
The final insult to the High-Aim 6 came in October 2004. AFMA decided sinking it was too expensive or environmentally risky. So instead of an oceanic burial, heavy equipment, massive excavators and bulldozers rolled right onto the beautiful beach at Broome.
Right onto this sand.
They tore into the metal. They literally ripped the ship apart piece by piece right there on the sand.
The structural integrity was systematically destroyed. The steel hull was sheared, crushed, and compacted.
It's so violent.
It was a very violent industrial end for a ship that had already seen so much human violence.
And then the pieces were loaded onto standard municipal dump trucks. They hauled the shredded remnants of the High-Aim 6 away from the ocean it was built for and dumped it in a local dirt landfill.
It's kind of tragic.
I have to reflect on the sheer indignity of this ending. Think about what the ship was. It was a vessel that survived the incredible crushing pressures of the deep ocean.
It survived the sea.
It bore witness to a bloody, desperate mutiny that altered 12 lives forever. It drifted completely alone like a ghost for weeks, acting as a decoy, carrying a cargo of rotting fish and the echoes of murdered men.
And its end is so mundane.
Its final resting place isn't the romantic depths of the sea. It ended up as shredded scrap metal buried under household garbage, plastic bags, and dirt in a municipal landfill.
It is a stark, grounding reminder that the physical world rarely offers the poetic closures we look for in our stories.
Never.
To the bureaucracy of Western Australia, the ship wasn't a cursed ghost ship. It was a biohazard, a navigational nuisance, and a massive piece of legal debris, so it was treated as trash.
Exactly.
But while the physical evidence of the High-Aim 6 was buried under garbage, the psychological weight of its story absolutely refuses to stay buried.
It refuses to fade because it pokes at our deepest fears. And that brings us to the haunting reflection of this entire deep dive. The story of the High-Aim 6 forces us to confront an incredibly uncomfortable truth.
We think we're civilized.
We like to think of ourselves as civilized. We believe we are bound by laws, morality, and an inherent respect for human life. But this ghost ship shows us exactly how quickly that veneer of civilization vanishes when humans are isolated in the merciless, indifferent environment of the open ocean, stripped of their societal safety nets.
The ocean strips away everything artificial. It leaves only raw human nature, base survival instincts, and the brutal reality of isolation.
Just raw humanity.
The High-Aim 6 is a dark mirror reflecting the breaking point of the human mind when it is trapped between the crushing vastness of the sea and the oppressive, exploitative conditions of a commercial longline fishing boat.
And as we close this out, I want to leave you with one final chilling image to mull over tonight. Let's do the math one last time.
The scariest part.
12 men left port. 2 were murdered. 1 was arrested. That leaves 9. 9 men from that ship were never found by the authorities, dead or alive.
They're just gone.
Yes, The Indian Ocean might have swallowed their life raft, but it's equally possible it didn't. Out there in the world right now, possibly living quiet lives, working normal jobs, walking down the street in a busy city, there are individuals who know exactly what happened on the night of December 8, 2002.
They hold the real truth.
They know the sound the captain made when he fell. They know exactly whose hands locked that rudder to send the ship wandering as a decoy, and they know the true, hidden motive behind the bloodbath. They vanished back into society, carrying the darkest secret of the sea with them.
A secret they will likely take to their graves, leaving the rest of us forever standing on the shoreline, peering into the fog, wondering what truly happened in the dark.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the shadows of maritime history. Until next time, respect the ocean, and remember that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't waiting in the water. They are the ones we bring on board with us.